Well, there was a newspaper reporter who was writing a feature story about prison life and was interviewing one of the prisoners. And he asked, "Do you watch much television here?" And the prisoner said, "Only the daytime shows. At night, we're locked in our cells, and then we don't see any television." "Well, that's too bad," the reporter said, "but I do think it's nice that the warden lets you watch it in the daytime." "What do you mean nice?" the inmate said. "That's part of the punishment." Not a daytime television fan. But speaking of daytime television, I am doing, not necessarily daytime, but I'm doing a series because we just finished the series on Jesus. And I felt like, I hope it was valuable for you. I know it was valuable for me to reflect on the wisdom of Jesus. And so I thought, where else have I received wisdom in my life? And I thought, well, how about some television? It might seem a little odd, but I thought it might be intriguing to do some digging. And so we're doing a series. I'm doing a series for the next 5 or 6 weeks or so on wise words from TV all-stars. So stay tuned. So, and I love movies. And I usually, I can get a lot of wisdom out of movies. But I decided to do television because when I was growing up, and since that time, there have been several memorable TV characters, right? Memorable. But television is kind of a mixed bag, isn't it? It does play a major role in our life. And if you see something on television, you know that millions of other people are seeing it. And I think at television's best, it can trigger imagination and curiosity. It can encourage education. It can keep us informed and create a community of common interest. Any Game of Thrones people in the room? Yeah, I know. Well, it does create a community when people, have you watched that? Have you watched that? Like, This Is Us. This Is Us. I'm really. Stay tuned. We're going to feature Randall. And, anyway, I love Randall. But unfortunately, television can also bring violence into our homes and values that we don't aspire to teach our children, right? And for this reason, many people have discontinued television. They have taken their TVs out of their home. But today, I want to highlight a show that became a beacon of peace and love and gentleness in the midst of TV violence and mass merchandising and advertising. And so I'm going to start out with a video that gives you a little taste of what we're going to talk about today.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Would you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor?
Do you remember that? That's so sweet. So, Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers decided that he wanted to use TV to actually nurture those who listened and watched. So he created Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which aired on public television for 34 years. Started in 1968 and ended in 2004. And he hoped to help children deal with their problems in a healthy way to instill a sense of confidence in them. And this is what he said. I give expression of care to every child to help him realize he is unique. So he saw every child as special and likable just the way they are. So I just want to put a little plug in. There is a documentary out in the theaters. It's still at Bethesda Row if you want to check it out. It's a documentary on Mr. Rogers' life, and it is so beautiful. I've shared that I wept through half of it. And so obviously in a 20-minute message this morning, I'm not going to be able to cover all of that, but I did want to just talk about him, share a little bit about his vision, and share some more videos with you. And so who is this wonderful being? Well, he was born in 1928 in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and he started playing piano at the age of 5, and he had a love for puppets. And he went on to major in music composition in a college in Florida. And after college, he saw a TV program and he thought it was absolutely horrible. He thought it was the worst thing he'd ever seen. And he goes, I'm going to go into television. And his family was like, what? He's like, I am going to use this medium to bring positivity to the world. And so he was hired by NBC in a low-level position, and then he moved up into production and management. He married and eventually had 2 sons, and he moved back to Pennsylvania to start the first educational TV station with a daily, live, hour-long show with puppets called The Children's Corner. And this eventually led to what we now know as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And during the time he was producing Mr. Rogers, he graduated from Pittsburgh Theological Seminary and was ordained a Presbyterian minister. But he never had any plans to preach. He had a different charge: to work with children and families through the medium of television. He swam every morning and never drank or smoked, and he was a vegetarian, stating he didn't want to eat anything that had a mother. So in each episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he would always come home. He would change his shoes and his sweater and sing his signature song, Won't You Be My Neighbor? And apparently all of his sweaters were knit by his mom. And each episode would include a sincere conversation with the audience and have a live guest. And often they would take field trips, or they'd watch a video about how something was made or how it worked. And each episode included a trip to the neighborhood of make-believe. Remember? On the trolley, ding, ding, with his signature chime song, and a castle and a kingdom of citizens who were all puppets. And each individual puppet's voice was Mr. Rogers. And they said that every puppet was an aspect of his personality. I thought that was very great. So on his show, he would talk about difficult subjects, about death and divorce. After Robert Kennedy was assassinated, there was an episode where one of the puppets asked one of the adults, what is assassination? And so they talked about it. In 1968, when civil rights protests were in the news, Mr. Rogers, in his gentle and unassuming way, decided to send a groundbreaking message for race relations. He hired African-American Francois Clemens as a police officer, a person of authority, on the show. And Officer Clemens stayed on the show until 1993. And so I have a clip of a show with Officer Clemens, and it was just so sweet, because what I don't show is Mr. Rogers comes in, and instead of putting on his tennis shoes, he puts on slippers and says he's going to go sit outside in the pool. He's going to put his feet in the pool because it's a hot day. And so he's sitting in the pool on a hot day, and Officer Clemens comes up, and he asked Officer Clemens to take off his shoes and put his feet in the pool. And so this episode is all about love and how we show love together. So I just wanted to show Officer Clemens and Mr. Rogers. Whoops. Stay tuned. There you go. So Officer Clemens is singing a song, There Are Many Ways to Say I Love You. So what happens in that video is that Officer Clemens sings the song, There Are Many Ways to Say I Love You, and Mr. Rogers helps him dry his feet in the spirit of Jesus drying the feet of the disciples. So as you can see, the show was simple in presentation and had no animation or fast pace or violence. He addressed children's common childhood fears with comforting songs, and he wrote all the songs in the skits. And for example, they took a trip to a hospital so the children would get it wasn't a scary place. He taught children to love and value themselves just as they are, children who are different, because it's you I like. And so there's a video, I don't know if we can get it. I know we're having a little technical difficulty this morning, so thanks for your patience. There was a little boy named Jeffrey Erlinger who was in a wheelchair. And so Mr. Rogers had him on his show so the little boy could explain what life was like in the wheelchair so that people wouldn't be afraid of him. And so it was just a very sweet interaction. So I don't know if we can have that one or not. Okay, we'll just stop the videos. That's all right. That's all right. It's not going to work today. It's okay. We're learning. Oh, here it is. Okay. Yeah.
That song that I sometimes sing called It's You I Like.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to sing that to you and with you.
Okay, sure.
It's you I like. It's not the things you wear. It's not the way you do your hair. But it's you I like. The way you are right now. The way down deep inside you. Not the things that
I do.
not your fancy chair. That's just beside you. But it's you I like. Every part of you. Your skin, your eyes, your feeling. Whether old or new. I hope that you'll remember. Even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like, it's you yourself, it's you, it's you I like, and it is you I like. Jeez.
So if you go on to the next one, the next video shows Jeffrey all grown up, and it's pretty sweet.
From Jeffrey Erlinger.
It's an honor to be here tonight, to be part of your this proud moment. You know, when you tell people that it's you I like, we know that you really mean it. And tonight, I want to let you know that on behalf of millions of children and grown-ups, it is you that I like.
So that was Mr. Rogers being inducted into the TV Hall of Fame. I know. We have Kleenexes. So sweet. His legacy was so profound, and he taught that we get to love ourselves and be our authentic selves, and who we are is way more than enough. The freedom to be just the way you are. No need to apologize for who you are, no need to be anything other than who you are. And giving that permission is an act of kindness and unconditional love. And you know, one of the things that Mr. Rogers did, I thought that was so beautiful, was he talked to children about how they feel. Because children can get angry and children might not know what to do with their feelings. And so he talked to children about how they really feel and to accept how they feel. And he taught them that they can make conscious choices about what they do, about how they feel. And it was a very beautiful thing. And he taught them to love. He taught us all to love people just as they are, not tolerate them, but love them, to embrace them. And his message was, I like you just the way you are. It's okay to be just who you are. And Mr. Rogers always wanted to take it deeper, to have people feel. And there was a moment, there's a story about him at the Daytime Emmys, kind of an event almost like what you saw here. And he was being acknowledged. And so he went up to the podium, and before he received any award, he said, I would like for us to take 10 seconds to reflect on who got us here. And at first, people were kind of squirming and giggling, and he said in 10 seconds, people were in their hearts with tears rolling down their faces. He knew how to get people in their hearts. So, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood went on to be nominated several times to win 4 Daytime Emmys. Like you saw, he was inducted into the TV Hall of Fame. And one of his sweaters is displayed at the American History Museum as one of the treasures of American history. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2002. An asteroid was named after him. Resolutions in Congress were inspired by him. Buildings, monuments, and works of art were dedicated to him. And there's even a 2018 commemorative postage stamp with him and one of his puppets. And of course, a primetime TV special, a documentary, and apparently Tom Hanks is going to play him in an upcoming movie. So I just would like to leave us today just asking ourselves, what is ours to do? What is ours to do to continue the legacy of Mr. Rogers? He taught that it's just perfect to be exactly who you are. Just like you are. I like you just like you are. So what if we could embrace our uniqueness? He wanted every child to know that they were unique and special. And here we are, a room full of adults, and we can forget that we are beautiful and unique and special just the way we are. And when we can embrace that gift, embrace that truth more fully, we give people around us more permission to be who they are and their specialness and their uniqueness. Thank goodness we're not all the same, right? So what if this week we take the time to reflect on what is mine to do to bring more kindness, love, and compassion into the world? To be love in action. That was another thing. Mr. Rogers was love in action, and people go, was he really that? And I tell you what, that documentary that I saw, that I said I wept through half of it, it was so authentic. He was the real deal. So what is ours to do to be love in action? And I think that does include embracing the specialness, the uniqueness that each of us is. So can we do that this week more consciously? When you look into the mirror and say, I like you just like you are. Yeah, how would that work? And acknowledge our feelings. Mr. Rogers tried to educate children on their feelings because there's not classes taught in school about your feelings. I know I didn't learn about that when I was growing up, about what do I do with the feelings of hurt, that I feel, or my anger, what do you do with that? And so he always wanted children to talk about it and to go deeper and to get to the root of what was really happening. So then we can make a conscious choice. And see, when we make conscious choices, the world's a more peaceful place, right? So how about this week, we do some journaling or some work and acknowledge our feelings, whatever we're feeling right now, and go a little bit deeper than the surface and ask what's really going on so that we can make a conscious choice. And I just really invite you, like Mr. Rogers' model, to be gentle with yourself. He was so gentle. You know, we're so hard on ourselves because we have such high expectations of ourselves. I think that's an epidemic in our world. And here Mr. Rogers invites us to be gentle and compassionate and to celebrate our uniqueness and to be kind. Mr. Rogers said, I want to learn to be the best receiver I can ever be. Graceful receiving is one of the most wonderful gifts we can give someone. So when someone gives you a compliment or someone gives you a gift or opens the door for you, an act of kindness, graceful receiving is the best gift we can give. Regardless of how young or old we are, it is important for us to claim our beauty and our uniqueness, and it's a way to express love in the world by being our unique selves. So if we can have one more video to close, let's cross our fingers. No, that's not, it's hold knowing.
It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside, and when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling. The feeling you know that I'll be back when the day is new. And I'll have more ideas for you. And you'll have things you'll want to talk about. I will too. You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being yourself. I'll be back next time. Bye-bye.
We love you, Mr. Rogers. So let's affirm together. I express love through my compassion, kindness, and authenticity. And so it is. Bless you.